is Lindsay Clancy. She was actually a labor and delivery nurse. She had 2 previous children, I believe, and when she had her last baby, she got help. She was actually diagnosed as a postpartum depression case. She could never be left alone because she was having some visual. She ended up to commit suicide. Before that, she actually took the life of all of her children. She was not successful with her suicide attempt, so she's sitting in jail.
In one of those instances, she was getting the visual that I was dying, right? And like physically there, she wanted to turn around and help me. And they're like, nope, you can't. You have to let him die. But they told her, yeah, Angel is dying, but not him physically. The old version of himself is dying. So you have to let him go through that stage of him going through this in order for him to evolve.
When I first had my baby, I had an epidural and everything. I pushed for about 3.5 hours. I was exhausted. Baby wasn't coming out. Pulled the baby with the forceps. His little face was all mangled. And as soon as they cleaned the baby and they put the baby on my chest, first thought that came to mind, which it would have been a red flag, but I stayed quiet, was, you hurt me.
Nomas.
Cool. We're good to go.
And I wanted to ask you, mentioning, like when we talk about, I know we're going to go organically into it, like what is out there for support, you know, things like that. There are organizations. Can I mention the organization?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
we're recording already, so you're good to go. Yeah. So that's something I learned as well. I'm not sure if you've done a couple podcasts or no?
I've done several.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if you've been, if you noticed that in the past, but at times when you're like, okay, we're going to start recording now, people shut down a little.
Good.
At least that's been my experience, that we're having such a good time. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit a record.
Like,
Yeah.
I tend to do that. It's now. I'm like, oh, I need to like be a certain way.
Yeah. It's crazy how the camera does that to people, right? I wonder why. I've gotten better, but I'm still far beyond to the level that I want to be at. But like we were mentioning before the podcast, you have to do the reps.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It feels like somebody's judging you, or somebody's already looking at you, or somebody's going to see it. I don't know that.
Yeah. So feel free to say whatever you want to say, name any organization. You have your up and coming podcast, right?
I do. Learning from the best.
Hopefully.
Yes,
Yeah.
Already. It's incredible.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
what do you want to start off with? I know you brought a couple notes. So would you want to start off with that, or whatever you want? This is
if you want to start up with so you know why I do this.
Let's do it. Yeah. Here, how about this? I'll do the intro right away. Perfect.
You got it.
Are you ready? Welcome to Hoy Nomas Podcast with Angel Houseman.
The floor is all yours. Quick reminder, we now have a call-in number where you guys can leave us voice messages, video calls. Let us know a story you would want us to share on the podcast, anything you want. The goal is being able to interact with the people that support the channel. Even if you're looking for love, we will find your true love on Hoy Nomas Podcast. Also, for anyone that is interested on creating your own channel, we have our Amazon storefront linked in the description where you can find all the cameras we use, the microphones, the lights, the equipment where all of our podcasts are recorded to. If you need any help with editing services, we are able to produce your entire podcast, edit your short form content from Instagram Reels, TikToks, etc. You can look at all of our content as reference and we got you covered. And finally, if you want to support the channel, you can leave us a super thanks down below, which will help us tremendously, and we'll make sure to highlight that comment on the upcoming podcast and give you a shout out. Now back to the podcast.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me and just, starting this conversation, because we're going to get into a conversation that can be very difficult for a lot of people because there's a lot of expectation. And I know we're going to take it into different routes, but I would just like to bring a little bit of awareness and clarity. So I'm here today because I want to talk about maternal mental health.
Nice.
And I was really inspired by your episode with your cousin. And I'm really sorry to hear that she went through a lot of things without knowing, and how your TikTok hit 2 million views.
Yes.
And it just shows you how other people are out there really unaware of maternal mental health. And of course, being a Latina with our culture, it's even the struggle is a little bit harder. So what gives me the right to come and chat with you about this? Like, hey, what do you do, Dee? So I'm a maternal mental health advocate myself, and I have lived experience. So I have 3 children, and with my son, my ultimate diagnosis with him was postpartum anxiety, depression, OCD, with subsubdermal symptoms of psychosis, PTSD, and anxiety. So it caught me by surprise. I had no idea that was.
Okay, so from my outsider perspective, you just mentioned a lot of different terms that I have no idea what they mean.
We're about to get into them so we can clarify.
Perfect.
So I kind of wanted to just grab a little bit more of stats to like build the baseline, and we go from there. So first of all, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, she's struggling with postpartum, or your partner is going through postpartum. Well, what does that mean, right? Or they'll say postpartum depression. Oh, you see her sad, or possibly what happened with your cousin, where she was having more of like visuals, right? And she's like, this is more maybe of a psychosis case. But for some people, it's like postpartum depression. Well, first of all, we no longer call it postpartum depression. It's actually called perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. The name changed because not every woman was depressed. They were experiencing a lot of other symptoms, like the postpartum stress disorder, anxiety, the depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, and in cases, psychosis. So that's why the name changed. So 1 in 7 women will experience postpartum depression, and 1 in 10 dads will experience postpartum depression. And 1 in 5 will experience perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that will require treatment. And just for everyone listening, it is 111% treatable. With when you have the help, the awareness, and the support, having some treatment for whatever that may be, even if it's a mild anxiety or depression or something else like that.
So you said there's 2, right? One that you can actually get or receive treatment for, and the other one you don't?
Nope. If you receive treatment, the thing is, sometimes we don't say anything because, and this is why 1 in 7 women will experience postpartum depression, but they will hide their symptoms due to the shame and the guilt. So all of them are treatable. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which falls is the umbrella for anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD, bipolar disorder, and psychosis. All of that is treatable if caught on time. And when it's not treatable, it means we lost a mom. More than likely, she took her life at that point.
Does that happen? Does that happen often?
It does. So up to 20% of maternal deaths are actually by suicide. It's more than likely for a mom to take her own life than losing a life of a mother due to hemorrhage during a delivery or hypertensive disorders.
Wow.
So, but we don't hear about it because we
Not
always
at all.
think moms are, you're pregnant, and the first thing is like, congratulations. We don't know the state.
Right. Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah. And and that's very, very common, right? Oh, such a beautiful thing. You just had a baby and that's it, right?
Yeah.
You don't realize how much work it takes
Yes.
just to keep this baby alive.
It is. It
on
does.
a single daily basis.
Absolutely.
It's so hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know it firsthand.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm learning as I go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are parts, that's why I kind of like I was like, I
Yeah.
want to talk about like a little bit of statistics. And then when we bring in the culture, right, like the BIPOC community. So this is something I made a little note, but
Yeah.
it's nearly 60% of Black and Latina mothers do not receive any treatment or support services for prenatal or postpartum emotional complications. And roughly 1 in 5 are not asked about depression during prenatal visits, despite the universal screening being recommended. So we see a higher risk And more than 50% of infants in low-income households live with a mother experiencing some form of depression. I think those numbers are pretty high.
Yeah, they are. But why do you think that is? That they don't? You said they're not asked. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So when you did your fiance give birth at a hospital or home birth?
Hospital.
Hospital.
Yeah.
Okay. So when she went first, hey, I'm pregnant, and they will give her like a screening. It's just a screening to see, hey, how are you feeling emotionally?
Okay.
And sometimes that one is not done, but definitely after she has the baby, it is by law in the United States, actually, to screen them for perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. Those are the ones where it would say, do you feel like harming yourself? Are you crying more? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of baby? Because we will talk about what is the difference between perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that covers all this, and what is the baby blues, right? About 80% of new mothers will experience the baby blues. Baby blues only last 3 to 4 weeks, so no more than a month. And mother can shower, mother can be around other people. She'll cry. Our hormones just drop after we deliver the placenta. Our hormones go from hundreds to nothing. And it takes about 4 to 5 days for the hormones as they are dropping. That's why it's super important to have like good nutrition around that time, and making sure that we're taking like still your prenatal vitamins or other supplements that are going to nourish our bodies. You had a question?
No. I think overall, as you mentioned, I don't think it's very talked upon as much, right? Because, and I feel like that's a reason why the TikTok and the Instagram post just took off and went viral, right? Because a lot of the times, even my cousin Berenice mentioned that she didn't really want to say much because it's happened. I think we read in the comments that it's happened that other women have talked about similar situations and their babies get taken away. Because they see them as not mentally stable.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So there's a thin line on whether to talk about these type of cases and incidents that are occurring to a woman that just gave birth because they're scared at the same time.
Yeah, it's always important to have like an advocate. So can I trust my partner to tell them that, that I am seeing things, or that I'm not feeling bonded to my baby, or that I'm really struggling to breastfeed? Am I a failure if I don't breastfeed because society is telling you otherwise? So since you mentioned that, I'm going to segue into a bit of my experience.
Okay.
So with my son, when I was pregnant, I had a beautiful pregnancy. I was a Navy wife for about 5 years. My husband at the time was deployed, and I was alone, but not alone. I had a lot of support from my mom, and I had a beautiful pregnancy. But I had what they called a water twin because I was really big, especially towards the end, which meant that I had 2 placentas in 2 bags, but one didn't develop a baby. So they're like, no, you're fine. Everything is good. So when it was getting a little bit closer to my birth, in a Mexican culture, it's like, ay, mija, you're going to be pregnant forever. Like, the baby can die if you don't go and tell them to get the baby out because they already have passed the 40 weeks.
Okay.
So they're like, no, you're just really big because you have a water twin. So my birth was very traumatic. I ended up having my baby, they said my baby was about 9 pounds. I'm sorry, my baby was about 7 pounds. And my baby ended up being 9 pounds, 13 ounces. So I had a very traumatic birth. I lost a lot of blood. The next day I almost had a stroke because I was refusing a blood transfusion. I had a friend who had passed away due to an infected blood transfusion.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and I was just, and it was in my teen years, and it was just like, I never want blood.
Right.
So it has that fear. And so they're like, you need blood transfusion. So after that, I have to because I almost had a stroke, passed out. And they were like, if we didn't catch it, you would have had a stroke at this point.
Wow.
So all those are risk factors.
Right. But doesn't that almost give you like, damn if you do, damn if you don't, right?
Yeah.
Because you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So the thing here, maybe I'm segueing into kind of why people take babies away, but maybe I'll pause for a second on that. We'll put a pin.
Yeah.
So there's risk factors associated because people out there listening can be like, well, how do I know? Exactly. Like I'm damn if I do and I'm damn if I don't, right? But it's like, how do I know that this can happen to me, right? People can have beautiful pregnancies. People may not ever have mental health disorder like previously, and they could potentially still go through a postpartum depression or one of these perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, because it's not only about the lifestyle that you have or who you are, it's also a hormone imbalance. And we don't know how those hormones are going to react or respond until it happens. And I am a volunteer with a local organization called Postpartum Health Alliance. I'm a volunteer and a member with them. Anybody can call that number and we can find them a therapist that is trained in maternal mental health when they give us their insurance. And if they don't have insurance, we can still find them some help. So one time I was volunteering with them and I received a call from a midwife whose client was experiencing some form of psychosis. And I asked what was her history. And she said, beautiful pregnancy, birth at a birth center, does not have a history of mental illness. And somehow she was experiencing psychosis at that point.
Wow.
So now it can be more of like the hormone imbalance. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. So I don't know exactly what it was, why it happened that to her. But just knowing that these that it can happen regardless of everything that you do. So there's risk factors associated. We have biological, psychological, and social. Biological, having a previous history of having depression in the past, maybe with the first baby, or having a mental illness in your family, or having a thyroid disruption due to hormone imbalance as well. Psychological, being a teen mother, having a baby in the NICU, not having a good relationship even with your own mother, trying to be a perfectionist. And social, we're in San Diego. We live in a military town. There's a lot of mothers here and a lot of young mothers from military families that this is not their home. They have no family around.
That's true.
Yep. And relationship stressors are part of social risk factors. Financial, who does not worry about money?
Yeah.
It's a big
so
one.
many different factors, right?
But it can be preventable if somebody's like, you know what, I have a history of mental illness, I'm going to get pregnant, or if they had abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to go see a therapist now. And you can take medication while being pregnant. They are much safer nowadays versus what it was before. And that is something that it is an option. Me personally, I'm not one to be like, yeah, I want medication. But medication, I'm not ashamed to say, saved my life. So segueing back into the baby taking.
Yeah.
So I had, it was really traumatic birth. Baby was 9 pounds, 13 ounces. I had no idea what was going on. I started to feel not like myself, even though I had a beautiful pregnancy and everything was fine. And that's when everything really evolved pretty quickly. I think my baby was about 3 months old. My husband came back from deployment, but we left to Mexico because we're like, well, why are we renting in the States when we can go to Mexico and just live there, border town? He can just cross the car, drive every day to the Navy base.
Right.
So I stayed at home alone with the baby all day, every day. Nobody around. My mother lived in the United States. I was in Mexico. I was not doing anything other than being with the baby alone. And I began to hear voices.
No way.
I began to hear voices. First, it was silly thing. Well, not silly, but, just kind of like push the baby. Or, just simple things. What? But one thing that I should mention.
I got the chills.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I first had my baby, and this is crazy, Angel.
Yeah.
But when I first had my baby, I I had an epidural and everything, but I pushed for about 3.5 hours. I was exhausted. Baby wasn't coming out. They pulled the baby with the forceps. His little face was all mangled. And as soon as they cleaned the baby and they put the baby on my chest, the first thought that came to mind, which it would have been a red flag, but I stayed quiet, was, you hurt me. Because when they pulled the baby with the forceps, they did an episiotomy where they cut the perineum, but it tore me completely to the rectum. Okay. My recovery of that was horrible. But my first thoughts were, you hurt me.
The baby?
The baby.
Oh, okay. So you felt that emotion towards the baby?
Yes. But I didn't say anything, because what kind of mother?
Right.
What kind of good mother says that?
Right.
Up to your brand new baby that just came out of you.
Right.
But that should have been my first red flag, that something was not going quite right.
But the thing is that if women do say that, it's looked down upon.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's just like, how can she? Wow, you just had a healthy baby. Here it is. Yeah. But I have these thoughts.
Right.
And I did not feel that overwhelming sensation that mothers feel of like, oh, I love my baby with all my heart, just like this overwhelming love for this baby. My first thought, literally minutes after he came out, was, you hurt me. So part of with the risk factors, and it's not feeling that attachment to the baby. And also having a psychological risk factor is having an abortion or a termination for medical reasons, or a miscarriage as well. So when we were in Mexico and I started to have these thoughts, right, of just push the baby, just do this, they begin to evolve. Then I begin to pick up objects, kind of like, grab that, hurt the baby.
Really?
It was really scary.
Huh, that's so weird.
And I still said nothing.
Yeah.
And every night my husband would come home and I would say nothing, even though during the day I heard these voices. First it's like, is it me? Is it making this up? But then it evolved to a place where I thought they were real. Like I couldn't distinguish. Like I really thought somebody was talking to me, almost like whispering in your ear. And
so I have a question with that. You say that almost if it's real, but then I also hear that people see shadow people, right?
Yeah. So psychosis, you may have visual hallucinations. I was having auditory hallucinations. So I couldn't see people, shadows. I could hear. So it was just like a voice versus somebody telling you, which is really real. Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask now, because from what I can see through the screen and social media, I know you're very spiritual, right? Is it all mental, or is it that we're tapping into another dimension, that it is other entities saying these things?
Yeah. So this is where it can be a little crazy, that back then I was not tuned into my spirituality as I am now. So when I was really little, I had a lot of spirits visiting. I had a lot of experience when I was really little. When I was a teen, I shut all that down because it wasn't cool. Cool kids weren't doing that.
Right.
And I didn't have like the comfort in my family, because growing up Mexicana and Católica, that's the devil. Anything like that is the devil. So you shut it down. Yeah. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I began a little bit to dive more into spirituality. I was 22 when I had my son. I was just diving into that. So I was still a young mother. So I wasn't, at that moment, it wasn't like, oh, it's my spirit guides talking, or, oh, it's that connection that I have. Right. I was very disconnected through my own consciousness, through my own awareness. I was feeding out more through the external because I was working and, how life's supposed to look. And I was not tapped into my own spirituality. So that's how I know in that moment, if I had a baby now and I was going through the same thing, I may be able to answer. It'd be like, oh, is this psychosis or is this, at that moment, I don't know. After that, I must have been probably 20, Well, I was about 26 when I really allow myself to open to spirituality again and begin my meditation practice again.
Right.
And
So through your experience, you think it's just all mental, or you think people actually maybe in a mental state or releasing these type of hormones that you're able to tap into another dimension? What would you think
with the psychosis or with spirituality?
with seeing visions and hearing voices?
Like through psychosis? Are we talking about psychosis lens? Because through the psychosis lens, I do feel it's like a mental hormone.
Gotcha.
When you are see like people are like, I see things since I was a kid. I see things. That may be that you are tapping in. But through the psychosis, I feel all that is just mental. Your hormones, you have such a radical hormone imbalance that you can begin to hear and see these things. It's not even, you're not consciously doing. It's just being created because it's based in fear. That's kind of how I interpret it.
It's so weird that all these different things happen, right?
Yes. So all that was happening. I had an experience with my son where the voices were talking more. It was getting more, before it was just like, push the baby, push the stroller, like very minor, I would say. But when I began to pick up objects, that was really scary.
And these voices would mention or tell you to do these things.
Well, they tell me I was a horrible mother, that I should hurt myself, that I should hurt the baby, that this is a horrible world. Why am I a mother? What gave me the right to be here? I was all alone, and my environment was just validating that I was alone, right? Without, it's like my partner is working to make money to feed us. Like that was not part of it. It was just like the mind is always going to try to look for validations to confirm. So it was quite challenging to have those thoughts and these voices telling me, well, if you're such a bad mother, maybe you shouldn't be here.
Right.
And I would pick up objects such as like forks, knives and things like that, and I would just hold them. And I was like, I would get so scared, I would throw them and go and cry.
Wow.
And then I will, pretend, put on the face, and go back to cooking or showering, bathing my baby. But I've had instances where I would be bathing the baby and I will have the voice of just like, and just see him like push him into the water.
Wow.
And it just evolved. And there was an experience where I was cooking spaghetti and I had this voice. They had already been evolving stronger and stronger, and it started to become they started to become more real rather than this is not real. It was becoming more harder for me to be strong, to not listen to them.
Right.
So it was becoming part of my reality. And when that day I was cooking spaghetti and had the baby in the stroller, and they were like, pick up the boiling water and toss it at the baby.
No way.
And in that moment, I just froze, and I just took a breath, and I turned off. Everything became very slow. I turned off the boiling water, and I just walked the baby to her room, and I went and I cried. And then I went back to making spaghetti. My husband came home, and I said nothing.
Wow.
Still. But the only difference, Angel, from that time versus all the other times that I had experience is that I couldn't stop crying that night. So once he kept pressing me, what happened? What's going on? Why are you crying? Until I told him the next day. We were at the Naval Hospital, and they were like, the midwife. I had a midwife there, and she's like, you have postpartum depression. That's the only thing she said. She's like, go to the psychiatrist, psychologist. They did put me on some antipsychotics. So one thing to know, when you are going to be on antipsychotics, you can't be just on one. They put you on more than one, and then it's trial and error. That's why even if you ever seen a commercial for any pharmaceutical, anything, the little letters, right? It's like, man, should I take this, or I'm gonna die from something else? I die of this illness, or So same thing when it comes to psychosis. It's really. I spoke with a professor at from a local university in a conference a couple of years ago, and I was talking to him about that, and he said psychosis is really hard to diagnose. It's like a liability because you have to stay on them, and it can be, the over medication can be more dangerous
Yeah.
than the no medication. So there's a whole thing. So I went that route. I started to feel a lot better. Actually, I started to feel a lot better. And then I had a therapist who was great. And she was also able to prescribe medication. And when you're a new mom, you have mom brain. You forget things.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you may have seen
You know what?
this.
It's funny that you say that. Yeah, I caught that a few times. Like, baby, you already told me this.
Yeah.
Or you said this instead of that.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I said this. I'm like, no, you didn't. And luckily I've had other people that are like, yeah, you said
already
this
did.
other thing.
Yeah, so the mom brain is
Yeah.
there. So a few months later, I'm feeling great. I was not allowed to be alone with my baby. So we came back to San Diego. We stayed with my mother. And so my husband at the time was going to little deployments, 1-day trips, things like that. And one time must have been like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I realized that I had run out of medication. I was no longer in the antipsychotics. This was more of like a antidepressant, but I had to take it. So I told my mom, hey, I'm going to go to the ER because my therapist has said, Dee, if you ever run out of medication, you can go to the ER and get more, or you can just call me. But I didn't want to call her because it was during the week. It was around dinner time. I did not want to bother her. Well, that was the biggest mistake I could have ever done, is gone to the ER. I went to the ER. They sent me to the back. I began to tell these two interns, I could assume, what was going on, but I just gave him just a little bit of information, not a lot. But what I gave them was enough for them to lock me up. They locked me up like a crazy person. In San Diego, we do not have IOPs, which are intensive outpatient programs or even inpatient programs for people who are experiencing maternal mental health disorders. So they locked me up, and that being locked up there regressed me tremendously. After that, I began to hurt myself. I began to scratch my forearms bloody. So I always been one that wears really funky clothes. I used to work in the fashion industry. So that people were never, kind of wondering, why is Dee wearing that funky stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it would be the summer, I would be wearing a tank top, but I would be wearing these gloves that would go from my wrist to my elbow. But I wore them because my forearms were scratch bloody.
Wow.
Because that regressed me tremendously. So I know in the episode you did with the Berenices, somebody had comments like they took my baby away.
Yeah.
That is very real. But in my case, they took the mom away. So they processed me like if I was going to jail. I've never been in jail, but they process you where they take all your clothes away. And then I was allowed to do one phone call. So the phone call I did to my mom to tell her, hey, Mom, I'm not coming home because they're locking me up. And I was so scared, and they took me away from my baby. And all I can think is like, oh my gosh, my baby doesn't have me. And it was all due to the lack of awareness and education that the facility, the hospital, the nurses, the doctors had on maternal mental health.
Right. And what gives them the right to be able to do that, though?
Well, they're doctors. They, they know what is best for you.
Yeah.
And that was not what was best for me. So they put me on a 72-hour hold. But I was there only for 24 hours. Till this day, I don't know who called my therapist. The next day, they tell me they had a phone call, and it's my therapist, and she's screaming on the phone, what are you doing there? They're gonna let you go right now. You need to come to me immediately. Yeah. And I remember going and seeing her. She waited for me outside her office, and I just bawled and cried. Yeah. It's like, what happened? She's like, why didn't you call me? Now I felt really dumb because I'm like, oh, well, I should have called her, which would have been the right thing to do.
Right.
But I didn't want to bother her. How silly is that?
Yeah.
So.
Or at the same time, it's a shock. You don't even know what to think at those moments, instances, right?
Yeah, you never know,
because your first thought was the baby, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? It's happened various times that I've heard through the news. Now I'm not sure what the actual case is, right, or what caused it, but I've heard of moms going to jail because I think this one instance that I saw in the news was that this mom put her baby inside of the dryer. And the baby died, obviously, right? But right away, the people are like, oh, that's a horrible person. But as we were mentioning earlier, sorry, I'm having to
Oh.
as we were mentioning earlier, it could have been postpartum psychosis or postpartum depression, but things like this happen all the time.
They do.
Yeah.
And even to the people that are most trained, they do happen. And I just ask everyone, it's like, look at them with eyes of compassion. I know how horrible thing just happened.
Yeah.
But just let's think what was the action. It doesn't remove what she did.
Yeah.
But let's see what led her to that. And there are evil people in the world, right? That will do horrible things.
Excuse me. Do you mind if I bother you with a napkin? Sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much. I don't want to be in the freaking podcast with my runny nose. And I'm not going to cut this off. We'll let this go.
There you go. Hey, keeping it real.
Yeah.
Hey.
We got to edit it.
Yeah. No, I'll let this in. That way they can see the realness. Yeah. For these episodes, I never cut anything off. So just a FYI.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah, because then it makes it more difficult. I mean, I can because you can easily search the word. Like I'll search napkins or something, and I'll go there and then just cut it off. But I like to leave everything just raw and organic.
Love raw.
Yeah.
Yes. Keeping it real.
Yeah, exactly. So as I was mentioning, before I knew any of this of psychosis and all these different types of cases that women go through, right away my mindset would have been, oh, this horrible person, right? Which she might have been, right? But she might have been going through some cases like this.
Yes. A lot of the times that's what happens. And there was a case a couple of years ago. I think it was a couple of years ago. Her name is Lindsay Clancy. She was actually a labor and delivery nurse up in, I believe she was in Massachusetts. I may be butchering this. But she knew about all this, and she had 2 previous children, I believe. And when she had her last baby, she got help. She was actually diagnosed as a postpartum depression case, and it was told to her family that she could never be left alone because she was having some visual hallucinations. So she ended up, long story short, she ended up trying to commit suicide.
Wow.
But before that, she actually took the life of all of her children.
No way.
And she was not successful with her suicide attempt. So she's sitting in jail now. But the system failed her tremendously.
Right.
Like, she was doing all the right things, and once she got on the correct medication. So what happens to these mothers, right, after when they get into the correct medication, they're like, oh, I did this. How could I do this?
That's
now I'm
horrible.
sitting in jail because we are not prepared to have facilities to rehab these mothers. Well, not necessarily rehab, but just have given that compassion, like just knowing that they took the life of their children and tried to take their own life. It's like punishment enough.
That's what I was gonna say, right? That's horrible.
Yeah. So, and this is a case that I actually recently went to see. I'm trying to kind of stay on top of it and see what's the evolving nature of it. And nothing has happened yet. They want to prosecute her because she had a plan to do this to her children, but she was saying that people were talking to her about it. Salud.
I hope I'm not getting sick.
No, high immune system.
If you don't need the water, I'll take the water.
Oh no, take the water. Yeah, take the water.
There's more there if you want some, and beer. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's horrible to hear.
So one or two in 1,000 will experience psychosis, and over 1 million women will suffer from a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder in a year. So it's not very, very common, but I believe now the nature of postpartum depression. Some of them do have some hallucinations, which is usually not part of postpartum depression. That's why I'm like, a lot of people say, oh, I had postpartum depression, but I had hallucinations. That always tells me that they have subsubdermal symptoms of psychosis, because I had the obsessive compulsive disorder where I was always checking on the baby, something's going to happen to the baby, and that evolved into subsubdermal symptoms. Subsubdermal just means that you don't have enough symptoms to be called psychosis or to be called something else.
Why would you say that it's not so common to hear about all these different things?
Well, no, not so common to hear about psychosis, but people don't hear about it because it's mental health. Mental health in general, people stigmatize it. You don't want to be. I think now is becoming. I don't want to say trendy, but there's a lot of people.
Right. I've heard about that too. Yeah. That people now just want to use mental health as an excuse for so many different things, right?
So people that are really suffering from it may not want to say anything. And those are the ones we need to keep an eye out.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always check on your strong friends.
Yeah.
Check on your mothers too.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not too sure if you had feedback to this, but in that podcast with Berenice, we mentioned that people in Mexico, maybe they have different types of diets, that maybe that's a reason why they don't get postpartum psychosis or depression. Not sure if it's a true statement or it can be one of those cases that they just don't speak on it.
I want to say they mainly don't speak on it because it's just not talked about. And coming from Mexican culture, right? Like my grandma had 9 kids, several miscarriages, and she had kids back to back. And just when I actually struggled with it and actually finally started to talk about it, some of my tias, my abuela, they're all like, oh, I went through something like that.
Oh, really?
But it's like, I just never told him. My grandma was like, how? It's like, I had kids that I needed to feed. I had kids to tend to. I had no time to be crying in a corner or be that. I have to, kind of like get your faldas ready and let's go forward, and ignored it. So it can be very, I feel like a lot of people, especially in our culture, just don't say anything
and they just tough it out.
Yeah. And you just suffer in silence. Maybe that's why we have some abuelitas gruñonas sometimes.
That's what I was going to say. That's why there's so much trauma in the past generations, right?
Yeah. Because you're supposed to just be strong, and just go forward, be strong. Don't worry about anything else. Your kid, and then it's the focus on your kids. Make sure they're okay. Make sure they have everything they need. How about me? How about the mother that gave birth to those kids? Am I okay? Yeah. So
the crazy thing is that if they were going through these type of things, they had so many kids back in the days. So it's so weird that they never really spoke about it. They just like we said, maybe they just toughed it out.
I think it's more of that. And some people, don't get me wrong, some people will not have it. I have a lot of friends that are like, I cannot relate. Wow. I have empathy and compassion, but I cannot really, I don't know what that means, because my baby, I had a beautiful pregnancy and my baby came right out and I was just instantly in love, and it hasn't stopped. And that is amazing though. So that does happen. And nutrition always plays a role. So, if we're eating hamburgers every day or, things like that, well, we're not, maybe our immune system is not high, things like that. So it's important to have a good nutrition always, regardless. But especially when we're prepping the body to be feeding 2 or 3 when you're pregnant.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Did you have any more notes in your?
See.
Yeah. That way we make sure we touch on that. And
yeah. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to do, like you said, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and you talk about all those things, postpartum, depression. So postpartum depression, it can happen to 1 in 7 mothers and in 1 in 10 dads. PTSD and postpartum depression, there'll be more, crying a lot more, being, very sensitive, not wanting to be out with anyone. So mothers tend to isolate themselves. With PTSD, it can be a traumatic birth or even an interaction with the staff that can be very traumatic. With bipolar disorder, 50% of women will be diagnosed for the first time during the postpartum period, more likely than anybody just in the general public. So it's a higher risk. Anxiety, what can I tell you? We live in an anxious world, and especially after the pandemic, being isolated and, having to give birth. alone with a mask
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Imagine like the level of anxiety telling you we have to take your baby away
Right.
and test him for COVID right now.
Not having your loved ones in there.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
how the level of anxiety, so the rapid evolving of anxiety just in the world is high. So now for these mothers, that's another like risk factor to have no support, to have had a baby in an event such as COVID.
Yeah.
And then we have OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, which is one of the ones that was my big ones, is the constant checking on the baby. You're constant checking on the baby. There are some parts of intrusive thoughts. And same with depression, you can have intrusive thoughts that can range from mild, severe, or just kind of modern. Same thing with obsessive compulsive disorders. But this is where you have postpartum depression, obsessive compulsive disorders that can evolve into that psychosis state. So with the notes, I think I've kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
And I just had a little bit of the notes of where you were talking about with Berenice about just the medication.
Gotcha.
Just the medication.
So
piece.
when it comes on to la cuarentena,
Oh yeah.
what would you say about that? Is it a myth or is it something that women should follow?
Oh, my humble opinion is it would be great if everybody could follow, but there's different things of what la cuarentena means to somebody versus like what cuarentena means for somebody else.
Okay.
You know, it's like with Berenice hearing her story, and it's like, you can't leave the house, you have to taparte toda, right?
Right,
like all
yeah.
the things. But it's like, okay, now you cannot leave your house, but you have no support in your house. So it's me alone with the baby all day for 40 days going crazy.
Right.
So it's like what la cuarentena used to be in our culture. Back in the day, you had a whole village of women that supported you, that will feed you los calditos nutritivos, that will take care of your baby so you could shower, so you can sleep. They will talk to you. They will create that community. That's what la cuarentena is.
Yeah.
Like making sure mom is okay and giving her the time to recuperate while we're taking care of the baby. She can still be with her baby, but I'm going to make sure that I'm going to feed the baby. If she wants to feed the baby now, perfect. But I can help her out with some feedings if she wants to sleep, making sure that she's bonding with her baby, keeping an eye on like, okay, is she breastfeeding? Is she bottle feeding? Like really tending to the mother. That's what la cuarentena is for. And of course, with the myth, it's like, te va a dar un resfriado si sales toda destapada and things like that. It's also because of the bleeding after having a baby. Some women will have more severe bleeding depending if you had a C-section or a vaginal birth. And how tough it could have been, the vaginal birth, or challenging.
And that's something that they mentioned in the comment section that, yeah, you just had surgery, so you want to make sure you cover up. That's why the whole supposedly cuarentena was part of, right? But I feel like at the very end, I think everything ties into just making sure that the woman that just gave birth is safe and sound, right?
Yes.
And going back to what you were saying, I really, now I truly understand that it really does take a village to raise a baby.
Yes.
Right, like earlier today, I had my mom come and help me while my fiance's working, and then yesterday, my fiance's mom was helping us with the baby. Just so many different moving parts, just to make sure this baby is fine and safe for the day, just for a single day.
Yes,
right?
yes. And imagine if you guys didn't have that support and you were living, I don't know, up in Michigan somewhere, you had no family or something. You know, it's like it's just the three of you. You have to figure it out. And the stress that it puts on both of you, right? It's like, I'm picking up all this extra things while somebody is doing, it's a lot. So it takes a village to raise the parents almost.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else when it comes to?
I think you just kind of wanted to mention on the medication during pregnancy. It is there's a lot of more different medications. I always say talk to your providers about it, especially for somebody who's not feeling comfortable with medication. There's also alternative, naturopath doctors that can put you in different supplements. In case you're like, hey, I know I am prone to a postpartum depression. but I don't want to take medication. There's also alternatives to that. But for me, being on medication during my experience saved my life. And I didn't have to take it. It doesn't last forever as long as you get help. And the cases that I've seen where they don't get help, we usually lose the mother and the baby, or one or the other.
Oh. So now, I'm not sure how much you want to touch on this, but in this podcast, we've, one way or another, we've mentioned a lot about plant medicine, and specific to ayahuasca, just because I've done it 3 times. And for some reason, something tells me to continue spreading more awareness. And I personally think everyone should at least try it once.
No, I agree.
Right?
I agree. I agree.
So if you don't mind me asking, why do you agree?
I agree. Well, it almost ties back into because I had an experience with ayahuasca. I've done like 1 time 2 ceremonies.
Oh, no way.
So it was...
Two separate times?
It
Or
was
in one day?
No, it was like 1 weekend.
Okay.
Like I drank ceremony on Friday and then ceremony on Saturday, and then Sunday it was like a whole weekend.
Wow.
But one of the things, before I had my son, I had what I thought it was a miscarriage, but I was really young. I was like 21, and everybody's like, "Oh, mija, you're so young, don't worry." So it was very dismissed. I never had a chance to grieve that loss, and la abuela showed me that. So through ayahuasca, I was actually able to heal that part of me.
And how'd you hear of ayahuasca?
So ayahuasca, I'm going to tell something super funny. So I had a phobia, a fear of throwing up.
Okay.
When I was a kid, oh my gosh, even like my husband will attest now, like the kids will throw up and I'm like, I cannot, you deal with it. I couldn't smell it. People talking about it would just make me nauseated.
Yeah.
So I said, I always heard about plant medicine, being a teen, friends, things like that. But I said, I will never, ever do ayahuasca, ever, because you purge and you throw up. And I despise throwing up, so I'll never do it. But the more I dove into my own spirituality, my own consciousness, meditating, it began to, they say, la abuela te llama, right?
Right.
Grandma calls you.
Yeah.
And I began to hear more about it and learn a little bit more about it. And suddenly one of my friends is like, I know a shaman. She's fantastic. She people thrive. And I was like, I'm always I want to meet the people before I'm not going to be one to go also to a ceremony of like 30 people. Not that there's something wrong with that, but I like the intimate connections. I love to build relationships. Okay. So I actually met with the shaman, and we talked for like 2 hours. And she's like, well, I'm doing it on this weekend, and do you want in? And I was like, I think I do. I was a little scared because I've
done it 3 times and I'm still scared.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's kind of like calling me again, but I'm like, hold on, abuelita, let me figure this out.
Same here. Yeah. But man, the 2 last ceremonies, they were very physical. I threw up a lot.
Okay.
Now I do understand that it might be a lot of toxicity I still had inside. That's why I purged a lot. So I understand that, but just thinking back, I'm like, oh man, do I want to go through that?
Yeah.
The first one, it was very, very beautiful.
Okay.
The most beautiful experience I could have ever imagined.
Wow.
Yeah, I've mentioned it over and over that never in my life I've experienced so much love.
Wow.
Up until I did ceremony.
Wow.
Yeah, I experienced so much love that when I got to this deep space, I knew I was home there, and I just started crying because of all the love that I felt.
It's an incredible sensation.
It really is.
The first night I did, it was so funny because I thought, they're like, it's 3 days. I had no idea I was going to drink ayahuasca twice. Okay. So I'm thinking, it was an intimate group. There was, I think, 8 of us, all women. And they said, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I thought we were drinking on Saturday. I'm like, Friday's like a goddess circle. Yeah. No, you put out, spread your little sleeping bag, get everything ready. They're like, and my friend who actually came down, because I did it here in San Diego, came down from LA, and she's like, Diana, we're drinking tonight. I was
Wow.
like, what?
Yeah.
But I didn't have it even in my radar. But I was like, okay, I knew what a lot of people were talking about, like with ayahuasca and like how horrible experiences they had and bad trips and all that. But I didn't let that in. Like I didn't let that have an effect on me.
Right.
So that night I went and drank, and I was like, I'm just gonna let whatever needs to come, and whatever I need to let go. And I purged a lot, but what was really insane, I could hear like a voice talking to me, like, let it go, let it out, like really creepy.
Wow. It's funny that you say that. Other people have said the same thing. To experience whatever the pain, the suffering was, but just to let it go.
Yeah.
Feel it and let it go.
Yes. And I can feel almost like if I could see this jaguar, and I can feel like in the jungle, like at night, like that cold, just like, oh, it was very visceral. And I remember suddenly there was a girl next to me, and I saw there was this jaguar, and I turned my head, like I heard the jaguar speak, and I turned my head, and as soon as I turned my head, it was let it go, and boom, I turned my head back and started purging. And then it just shifted. I made that turn from hardcore purging to the beauty of it.
Wow.
And it was just wonderful. And the next day when we were integrating, chatting, she's like, I saw you. She had the same experience as the jaguar. She saw, like, she's like, I saw you, and I saw this thing inside you wanting to come out.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, we were having the same experience, which I thought it was really insane.
Yeah, you guys tapped into the same. Yeah.
And it was somebody I did not know. She came down from LA as well, and
Wow.
I've never met her before.
Aside from receiving that message of letting it go, was there anything else you received?
On that first night, I saw my grandpa who had passed away, and it was just like all this, like remembering your roots. There was this eagle that I saw, and then I just wanted to dance. I wanted to dance, but as soon as I heard like the Icaros play, well, I will purge again. I was like, and it happened for like even weeks after. Right after when I came back from medicine, my husband said, "You were gone for a week." He's like, after you did that, you were like not here. Just the integration process was really hard for me. I didn't feel supported. I think I wish I would have had more of a mentor after. Like drinking ayahuasca is huge, but I think the most important piece is how you integrate that experience into your own life.
Right.
And I don't think there's enough support yet.
Right.
The facilitators were fantastic, and I had one phone call with my shaman, but I really wish I would have had more.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense because it's a lot to receive.
Yeah.
And when you said your grandfather?
Yeah, I saw him.
Were you able to talk to him or no?
No, he was in the form of like an eagle, and I can just kind of feel his presence. So
Gotcha.
he was half Indian Jackie. So that's when I think also I began to become more interested in my Jackie roots. But my second day of drinking, which the next day I'm like, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, me pegó una revolcada la abuela. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I'm good. And they're like, you don't have to drink. But the next time I actually drank more.
You took 2 shots?
I took like 4.
No way.
The next day. Yes, like I took 1, and I could just feel something wanting to come out.
Wow.
And it will go back in. Oops. I'm
No,
so
you're
sorry.
fine.
Like I came out and come in, and I wanted it. I had so much resistance. Like I wanted it out so much. And but I had really beautiful moments, and there was one point where the shaman said, it's been too long, and you're not making that turn into the beauty and the love. And she's like, she didn't tell me, she just said, drink this, and it was beer.
What?
She said,
that's the first time I ever hear about that.
And she said it's beer cuts it, the ayahuasca. That's what she said. But what she didn't tell me is that she had blown mapacho into it, like the tobacco, so that it wouldn't cut it. So when either psychologically, I was like, oh, she's going to cut it. I'm going to be done, because I just felt like the grandma pulling me, like, do the work. She's like, you've been doing the work really good for like hours. You should have already kind of release it. But I had so much resistance. Like I was choking this thing didn't want to let it go. that allowed me to relax and be able to let go. And in that experience is where I really felt the connection with my unborn baby that I had miscarried. And it was beautiful. After that, all I had were amazing visuals. But
Really?
yes, but it was the getting there was tough.
What were those visuals?
I could see my baby. I could see people dancing. And one of the things when I was going through the really bad process, one life that the grandmother showed me was that I was like a boy in like a cave, and I saw my whole family being murdered.
Wow.
And nobody has ever shown me kindness. And that was one thing that I had felt probably subconsciously in my life, that I never really experienced like kindness for somebody else. And that's where I made that turn. And then the visuals was just, I love plants. I love to be outside and just like plants growing and almost like hearing the vibration of different things. But it just felt, and I could see everybody who was there, because then they had taken me to a different room because I just couldn't like make that turn. And I went back and everybody was dancing, but I can see them more almost like in their primal stages, like these women, like this, the origin of the divine feminine, like really coming together, and it felt really good. And I could see my shaman's face turning into like a wolf.
Wow.
It was really awesome.
It's funny that you say that, because when I've done ayahuasca, even though I know it's random people, I know the shaman, he's a human being, but I don't know if it's just because I'm under the influence of ayahuasca, right? But they just look like pure shadows, and he almost looked like an Aztec god just sitting down there. You know, it's just very impactful. It's like, what the heck? Yeah. They've even mentioned they've seen aliens in ceremony. They've done surgeries, so many different things.
I think I had a lot. That's kind of why also I think it's kind of calling me back to like do it, because it was my very first time like back to back, and I don't think I allow myself to let go enough. So just having all that resistance, like I said, maybe the toxicity in the body and different things, but really allowing yourself to be like, you know what? I know I'm going to be okay. You know, I'm in good hands. I'm conscious of what I'm doing. I don't think I'm going to die here because it's the fear.
Right.
It's all the fear that is holding you back. But since I had that experience, I don't have the same feeling around vomiting anymore. Like if I see somebody, more than likely I'll help them, you know, but it's not like that. Oh my gosh, I can't even have them.
Earlier that you mentioned Icaros, it's amazing how Icaros and music and waves and affect the body, right? Yeah. For instance, I remember this one Icaro in specific, or I'm not sure if it was an actual Icaro, but they would put different songs, right? And when this specific song was saying, I just want to be a good man, or in the song, right? That's when I would throw up. Yeah. And I just feel like that's one of my biggest missions, that I just want to be a good person. I just want to be a good man in this life. And I feel like I have that very embedded within myself, that it impacted me so much. And I just, every time I would hear that, I would just throw up. I would throw up.
So just as you're saying that, it can be also just you're releasing a lot of, we're chained through our ancestors, right? Yeah. So a lot of times, like when that happens, it's like almost like a cleansing of just like
it really is,
and just kind of doing that. I think it's that I agree with you. Everybody should try ayahuasca at least once in their life, and especially a lot of people judge it a lot, and it's the people that have never done it.
But that's because of not being well informed, or no offense, but ignorance, right? Yeah. Because once you experience it, I'm not crying, guys. It's I have a runny nose. It's once you experience it, it's just it's happened. Well, obviously it's happened to me, right? But you want to share it with your closest friends, because it's just so amazing that this plant has so much wisdom. Yes. And you really tap into another dimension.
You do. That's why the Icaros, one thing that I forgot to, one of the biggest visuals I had was that I can see a plant in my stomach, like neon colors, like growing. And then when I talked to my shaman, she said, "Oh, that's the Nayarao." And every time I would hear Icaros, I could see it.
Wow.
But it happened when I would listen to Icaros after, I will have the nauseated sensation and I will feel the Nayarao. And even now, and it's been, I think I did it in 2021. Now, when I listen to Icaros, I feel it activated, which is really, really, really cool. But I actually, after my experience, I talked to my mom and my sister, and I asked them if they would be willing to do it.
Yeah. And what they say?
My mom said yes. My sister said, "Oh, not so sure." She's like, "I have a lot of resistance." She's like, "I don't like to be uncomfortable."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, well, you're gonna be uncomfortable."
Yeah. It's funny because I did it right then because I did it. Then my fiance did it as well.
Oh.
A couple friends of mine have gone as well. My suegra went.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just so many people just hearing.
Do you guys do it together, you and your fiance?
Yeah, we did it once together. In one of those instances, I guess she was getting the visual that I was dying, right? Mm-hmm. And she wanted to turn around and like physically there, she wanted to turn around and help me. Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Nope, you can't. You have to let him die." But they told her, "Yeah, Angel is dying, but not him physically. It's his old version of himself is dying. So you have to let him go through that stage of him going through this in order for him to evolve." But we did it there, I think twice or once. I'm not too sure. But I've done it 3 times. First one, beautiful. The 2 other ones received a few messages. But very physical. Yeah. Actually, through one of those, the third one, I think that's when I received. I hadn't told Chelo that I loved her. We hadn't told each other that we loved her. But then all of a sudden, I see 2 cards. One of me, like my face, and I see her. And from the deck of cards, they just get thrown on the floor. And both of them, of me and her, of Chelo, get together. And they're like, she's your soulmate. Yeah. And they're beautiful. Like, and so I received a message, just tell, if you love her, just tell her you love her. So after ceremony, I told her.
And here we are.
With the baby.
With a baby, yes.
Yeah, so.
Oh, that's incredible.
Right. And then I also received the message that we live in a simulation. That all of this is,
Oh, we do.
Yeah, you think so?
Oh, I definitely. Oh, that's a whole other episode. But
I think so too.
Yes, I very much believe that what we see is not what we see. What it is not what it is.
Right.
That's why it's very important right now for people to question a lot of things and come back to the center. Our answers are inside of us. The universe is inside of us.
Exactly.
God is inside of us.
And we're all creators.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's the perfect word. Yeah. We are all creators, but I do believe we are all playing a role where we are right now. And I love that your role is a role of service through bringing awareness through your podcast. And like I said, I want to be a good man, and you're already doing it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I'm trying my hardest. And like I said, as long as I impact somebody in a positive way, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. It's planting those seeds.
Definitely.
Just planting those seeds. And because we don't want it to become also what it is. People are showing you this is how life is. Yeah. And then you have to just listen to this, like, but what do you think life is?
Right.
And regardless if you're religious, spiritual, or atheist, like I work with a lot of clients that in my not maternal mental health work with a lot of clients that they are, scientists, and they don't believe in energy. While I am an energy worker. I'm sorry, they don't believe in a God or spirit, but they believe in energy. So quantum physics is how we connect because through energy work. So,
Nice.
Yeah. Nothing is real.
Yeah. I'm a strong believer in that. And especially right now that we're creating all this artificial intelligence that they're just getting smarter and smarter as they go. They're developing more and more information. It's just like not there's no ending to it, right? It's incredible.
But it will never have a soul. It will never have a soul. So it is, but unfortunately with like, you know, I love ChatGPT. Like if I have to write a professional email, is my friend.
Yeah.
But for the creative part, it's like, oh, okay, I don't want to use it because does it sound like me, right? And but the more you feed it, it's gonna sound like you.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, the more you do, and then it's like, oh well, it's making us lazy in a way because now we don't have to think. We just say a few words and there it goes.
Yeah.
So it's helpful in many ways, but it will never have a soul. So that's what we as humans have, and that's where, you know, like, okay, this is nothing is what it seems exactly, but we still have to live like in this world thinking if it's a simulation or not. And there are people listening right now, they're like, they're crazy. Like everything is tangible. This is alive. But what is beyond that? So everybody can keep just a little bit of an open mind to the possibility, because what we've noticed a lot that all these conspiracy theories, a lot of them are coming out that they're true.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And the thing is, as you mentioned, they're never going to have a soul, and we're human beings. So us as humans, we should be tapping in back into our roots.
Yeah.
Right. To be more in tune with nature, to be more in tune with just being part of this human experience.
It's coming back to love. Love is the highest frequency planet Earth has.
I agree.
It's the highest frequency we have, and just tuning into that love frequency. And how do we go with that? Through nature, like you said, things that.
Yeah, and that's why the powers that be, they don't want for people to feel love.
No, because actually, you know, energy, all this that is powering right now would be free because it can be.
It can be,
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you had that mindset, and it's just, especially with your background, right? I think it's more credible.
Well,
instead of Angel just talking nonsense.
I've been doing energy work since 2016, but before that, like I said, when I was a kid, I was very tapped in, and then I just kind of shut it all down, and then picked it back up, and. Just learning more of my, you know, who am I really at my core?
Right.
And I knew there were healing modalities that did not require, you know, to have a particular degree in psychology or into becoming a neuroscientist or things like that, which is fantastic. But I wanted to approach it more at a holistic, in a holistic way, and I wanted to channel, and I could speak. People speak to God all the time, right? Or speak to their deceased parents, or just have certain feelings and sensations. And I love to nurture like people that, oh, I think I heard my dad, or I think I heard my mom. It's like, okay, well, what makes you think that? You know, what were you doing? Or what makes you think that it was actually them, just so that they can really strengthen their intuition, because it's intuitive, and they're like, no, they're trying to talk themselves, no, it wasn't, and then something happens like, oh my gosh, it was, you know? And it's so awesome to see, and because they just transform. We never lose like a loved one, really. We lose their physical body, you know, the outfit they were wearing, but they can always be with us, and they're probably a lot closer to us now that they are in a non-physical form.
I agree.
But as a human, trusting yourself that you have that connection, that's where it becomes tricky. Yeah, definitely.
I know you brought your cards. I asked you to bring your cards. Yes. Would you mind? So I'm not too familiar exactly what it is, how it works, but I'm very curious, and I believe in all these different. They're called oracle cards. Right?
If you are someone that's suffering from hair loss, whether you're a man or a woman, there is now SMP, scalp micropigmentation. SMP is a non-surgical cosmetic procedure designed to create the appearance of a closely shaved or bust hairstyle on the scalp. It can also be used to enhance the density of existing hair by creating the illusion of fuller coverage. Make sure to contact SD Inc. as right now they are currently discounting $500 from your procedure if you mention Hoy Nomas podcast. SD Inc., thank you for being a sponsor to the podcast. And if you have a business or would like to sponsor the podcast, feel free to contact us through Hoy Nomas podcast on Instagram. Now back to the episode.
These are oracle cards. So the difference between, you heard About tarot.
Yeah.
Tarot. Yeah. So tarot is very structured. Like there's a structure. Like there's, I don't know much about tarot,
Okay.
but there's like the minor arcana, the major arcana.
Okay.
And they have like a structure. So oracle cards, you will see different sets. There's like an angel oracle card. Well, right now you go on Amazon, type in oracle cards. Zillions are going to come out.
Yeah.
So the one that I brought today is by a woman named Rebecca Campbell. She is actually a British life coach, and she's just an incredible being, but she's extremely spiritual. And this is actually her very first deck. It's called Work Your Light. So basically an oracle cards are more intuitive rather than more structure. So the interpretation is different, because when you're in tarot, like, the devil upside down means something,
Right.
and with this, they're more I like oracle just because I can sense the person and I can just kind of have a feel of our mutual interchange and vibration. So when I do these like online, people are like, oh my gosh, it resonates so much. And basically, I don't pull the cards. They pull the cards.
Gotcha.
Even though they're online, right? I can't.
Oh, okay.
So because I have you here in front of me.
Perfect.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Right-handed. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to hold them in your left hand.
Okay.
And with the right hand, you're going to knock them 3 times.
Okay.
And then you're going to shuffle them.
Okay.
When you knock them 3 times, you break the energy. Okay. And
Just
just shuffle them.
Okay.
However, like you had a deck of playing cards, even.
Yeah,
Just
I don't play too much
okay.
cards, but
However you
loteria maybe.
like. And there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, just shuffle them.
I'll let spirit guide me.
There you go. Perfect. So your left hand is your intuitive hand.
Okay.
Okay. So now we don't have too much space here. So I don't know if you like to just feel in. Okay. Or do you want to create a little space here? Perfect. Wonderful. So I'm going to move this inside just so that you can have more room.
Okay.
So now here, you already shuffle them, spread them. And with your left hand, I'll have you give me actually 3.
Okay.
So
with my left hand.
With your left hand is your intuitive hand. Okay. So I'm gonna move this.
Yep.
Just so we can see it. I'm gonna put this right here.
Perfect.
Okay. So you can give me 3 with your left hand. Yep. Just. Can I move this guy a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it rotate? Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That way, so you guys can hear me while I lean in. So we pulled 3 cards.
Okay.
And we're just going to interpret them as past, present, future.
Okay.
But they all are intertwined. So with the past, you got sisterhood. Sorry, I'll lower this. You got sisterhood of the rose, beauty and devotion, priestess, mystic, and teacher. So this card for you, it tells me more of the teacher. You are a mystic because you're curious about all these things. You continue to learn, and you do have devotion towards your own understanding, your own path. But what this card represents mostly for me is the teacher in you. You want to share. You are a keeper of knowledge. You want to... So a lot of times when I do these readings, there's a lot of feelings that I have to interpret. But this one here, Sisterhood of the Rose, it shows me a lot of the teacher in you. And due to our previous conversation before we even started, there's a lot of that where you want to head.
Yeah.
So kind of where we are, present, the Council of Council of Light. So we have divine orchestration, helpers in the saddle realm. So begin to speak more to your spirit guide. So Angel, are you more spiritual or more religious?
Spiritual.
More spiritual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I say the word spirit guide, is that something that you would be like, not so sure, D?
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if I say higher self, what seems to resonate most?
Just my true self,
Your
right?
true self.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not the person, right? But my inner self.
Yes.
Yeah.
So right now in the present moment is ask, do you meditate?
I try to. I try to. I've done it a couple of times, but I really do want to do it more.
Okay. So other thing, so this card is speaking actually a lot more loudly, because when you come, meditation literally just means to be present. So a lot of times people think that you have to be sitting cross-legged, out and meditate for hours. No. The other way to do it, when you said I try, is contemplation. So maybe you're sitting outside and just like contemplating on your life, coming into those moments of stillness.
That I do that, especially when I'm working out, like in between sets. I really like my desires, my thoughts. I do that and just I really take all that in when I'm working out.
So they're telling me that you're great at visualizing. Have you ever done a vision board?
I've done it a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it seem silly? Like, do I really believe that this thing is going to come?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, I believe in it, but I do understand you have to take action towards it.
Oh, of course. Of course. One of the things just with this card is just kind of keep saying like, when I do this, sometimes I begin to channel instead of just reading the cards. So I begin to feel things around you.
Yeah.
I keep hearing that you're very visual to continue to. So when you're meditating, see yourself where you want to be. See yourself not as if it's separate from you, but you see yourself as if it is now. So the clothes that you're wearing, there's something on my eye. Where like you're in that office, you are with that team, you are driving the car, you like seeing yourself. This is where you are. And this card is actually asking you to take a lot of actions towards that. So maybe as soon as you wake up in the morning, before the baby starts crying, or you have to go tend, or you have a minute for yourself, just to see yourself every morning, if possible, where they're saying more of where you are, because time doesn't exist.
Right.
So my eyes like.
Yeah, no, take your time.
I hear a lot of this one where you are. There's a lot of momentum in your life right now. There's a lot of momentum. So visualizing is your ally right now. But a lot of the times, just for people who are hearing, you visualize. And it's like, I've been visualizing this, but you have to have a correlated feeling. You have to feel it in your gut that you're there, that you have your team, that you're that whatever it is that you want, that you are there and doing all those things. All right. So past, present, future. Play. Have fun. Celebrate. Don't be so serious. Enjoyment. So all this goes hand in hand. To enjoy, the more playful, the more fun you're having, the more good you're feeling. And when we have those good feeling sensations while we're visualizing, you just catapulted. But here they're just returning me to this one again. You are in a state right now of any action you take with the right alignment, you feeling good, your vibration is rising. We're not saying that, challenges are not occurring, but you focus on that, it's just going to make it happen. It's because I think they want to give me a timeline for something. Okay. They're like, February and June, February. But I feel February and June are two things, 2 months that things could occur. So they're not being very clear if it's just like, I feel February, but I also feel June. So I don't know if it's in between, or is it going to be something in February and then something in June. But yeah, take action right now.
Yeah, as you say that, is because that's something that, because I work so hard in everything I do, right? But I am very understanding that time doesn't exist, right? But then part of me is like, yeah, I know and I understand that time doesn't exist, but at the same time, I'm like, when? Like I've been like putting so much energy into it, but I just I'm a strong believer into walking by faith, not by sight, right? Because when you start walking by sight, you're not going to see the fruitions of your current successes. You're not going to be seeing, because everything is manifesting in the spiritual realm, right? So I'm very eager at times. It's like, when? But I do backtrack and tell myself, just relax. What's meant for you, it's going to happen, at its own time.
Yeah. So we have to release the resistance. So humans, we are great at working against ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
And then anytime we have an intention, we know a positive intention is much more stronger than a negative, or like a positive thought is stronger than a negative thought. So when we have like a really good positive intention, we set out ourselves to do, then I don't know necessarily if I want to call it the ego, but it's like, this little voice is like, but when? Look at how hard you're working. And right now when you said, I work so hard, I just heard it's like, let that go. You don't have to work hard. We actually do not have to work hard to the part of like what working hard means.
Right.
So it's like working in alignment. It's like you're not going to work any less if you say I'm not going to work hard.
Right.
You're still going to give it your all. As long as you continue to show up, giving it your best, and living like a good life of nurturing yourself and not putting yourself in the back burner in any way, showing up for you and your family, and raising that vibration within you, because it's the most important. We are a vibratory universe, a world where we live in a vibrational planet, speaking a vibrational language. So our words matter. So when you have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to let it go, let it go.
Yeah.
And like really trust. This is what the fate comes in, right? I know I'm taking all the right steps in that direction. Now I'm going to just enjoy. That's where your play comes. More enjoy what I'm doing. And I know it's leading me to the path of my highest good. So a little tip that I would love to share is, you have a vision and you're like, I want this so bad, right? And instead of choking it, when it's going to happen, it's letting it go and say, I want this or something better. That way, if it's not created the way you wanted it, it's going to be something better the way you actually need it to be. And it releases, it shifts your energy, shifts your vibration, and it lets you do it in a much more relaxed way without having the attachment of, but why is it not happening when I'm doing it all correct? Sometimes, again, time doesn't exist, but our timelines are constantly crossing over.
I agree. And that's something that now, as we mentioned before the podcast started, that's something that I'm letting go of a lot of the post-production. Before, every day after work, I would get home and I would at least be on the computer for a good 2 hours. So far, it's been on a daily basis, right? Now, for the past 2 weeks, I feel like this is the first time I'm coming into my studio area, that now it just feels like I have so much free time. Now I can really enjoy the time with my daughter, right? When before I would just like, I just wanted to like set her aside so I can come and work on the goals, to work towards the dream. But now I feel like I can finally be at peace, and at ease. So yeah, I'm working towards that. And so when you were saying that, I truly understand that. I'm actually working on letting it go and just enjoying it and just letting it be.
That's what we all need to do. But we get attached to why is it not happening? It's like, that's why I like, see how are you going to feel there, not how you're going to get there, just like or why, just let go. Let go.
And you know what, just and we can close it out in a few. One of my friends, I was talking to him and he said, like, Angel, like, I understand why you're doing different types of topics, different types of guests. He said, like, but if you were to just focus on one niche, then you would make it a lot faster, right? Because you gain an audience, but then at the same time, it doesn't satisfy me, right? Because it's not like, for me, it's just documenting conversations, right? And it's not it's not like you go on with your day and no, I don't want to talk to this person because it's not about this. It's not about music. It's not about a specific sport.
Yes.
No, you have genuine conversations with so many different types of people. And for me, this is me having fun, having all types of different conversations. Some can be silly, some can be serious, some can be very, very emotional, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
I'm really, really enjoying it. And to be honest, having this conversation with yourself today is probably one of my favorite ones so far.
Thank you. And that's the beauty of you, of like, you're curious, you want to learn.
Yeah.
And you said something super interesting, because everybody wants to put everyone in a niche, in a box.
Yeah.
If you do this, it'll be better this way. But what is sustainable for you?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know? You're like, I just want to have conversations with you. What is
Yeah.
my podcast about? About life and
Right.
people, and
Yeah.
you know, it's like,
Hey.
do I talk about ayahuasca and put it in plant medicine? It's always
Right.
like your root, and
Right,
that.
right. And
so perfect.
But the reason why I say that is because I strongly want to promote it for people, because I really truly believe in it, right? And if my soul, if my heart is telling me to do so, guess what? I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think before the podcast we mentioned, or we were talking about Joe Rogan for whatever reason, and I mentioned that to my friend. I'm like, well, look at Joe Rogan, look at the Avant. They have so many different types of guests. Yes, but he's Joe Rogan. Yes, but I'm like, yes, but I'm me. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yes.
I'm no less than these people. You know what I
Nope.
mean? Like, I get it. They've built their platform, but everybody's special and everybody's
Yes.
unique. If we're going to be downplaying ourselves, then we're making a huge mistake,
Yes.
because we were created under the vision, under God's image.
Yes. Yes. No, and you have the great attitude for that.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, if it takes me a little longer, but like Joe Rogan, he was the fear factor, you know, so it wasn't easy for him in a way either. He also had to build his credibility,
Right,
and
right.
it just evolved. And how long has he been doing it? What is the difference from you sitting here in your amazing space to, you know, having a lot of people later on that in the eyes of others are better guests or, you know, bigger platform.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah, and I've been so fortunate and blessed that I've had people that have 2 million followers here, that they've had 50,000. But at the end of the day, their story is not any better than somebody else that has no followers, you know?
Yes.
At the end of the day, everybody's equal.
Yes,
you know? So-
absolutely. I love that you're like, there's no comparison. And that's the thing, not to compare yourself to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's like, I am unique in my own nature, and I give myself the allowance and the permission to, if they can do it, why not me?
That's always been my mindset, right?
Yeah.
And before, I used to be so, I used to try to be so structured with the podcast, because obviously you continue growing, right? That before I would have been probably even too shy to be holding a napkin, right? I would have been like, if I wanted to sneeze, I'm like, oh man, I can't sneeze because I'm going to ruin it. But now it's part of the conversation. People at times want to see all of that.
You're
like,
human.
Yeah. So now and even if other people have maybe thousands of followers and whatnot, at the end of the day, it's just a conversation. Yeah,
It is. It is. At the end of the day, we're just learning about each other.
Yeah.
And being curious and putting out there some information that hopefully will reach somebody
Agree.
who, like with mental health and maternal mental health, with somebody who may be feeling very alone, because it happens, you know, that's why they don't speak. Nobody speaks up, because you feel shame and guilt, and people suffer alone.
Yeah.
And somebody who's maybe curious about ayahuasca is like, oh, well, that didn't sound so horrible.
Yeah. And I think that's been my recurring topic, ayahuasca, but
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I'm receiving that.
Yeah.
So I'm just channeling it through, right? Because it calls me, I'm doing it, and I'm just following the receptors.
You see, you're like the spirit podcaster. There you go. You're like, this is not even me. It's like my spirit speaking through. And that's beautiful.
Yeah. Do you mind if I show the cards so people can see
Of
the...
course. Yes.
They have a visual.
Of course.
So just wanted to just show this is the Sisterhood of the Rose.
The rose, yeah.
So just so people can see. The second one that I pulled was Council of Light, right there. And then lastly, it was Play.
Yes.
Right here.
Enjoy.
Play.
See that your council of light, that's your spirit coming through. and tell you who to have, what to speak about,
Right.
what questions to ask.
Yeah.
There you go. And enjoying and having fun.
Yeah. Any diebacks? Anything that we would have maybe been good to talk about? Any final words?
Any final words? Stay true to yourself, everyone out there. Just the most beautiful power you have is to be authentic and not to pretend to be anybody else. And if you're struggling with mental health in general, or if you're a new mother out there, know that you're not alone, and it's okay to ask for help. And if struggling with mental health, it's okay to speak up. And maybe if it's not within your community, know that there are other communities out there that are ready to support you, and that no one out there is less than anybody else.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
Just trust your heart.
Yeah.
And drink more water and meditate.
If there's any links you would want me to put in the description, feel free to send them afterwards.
I will. Yeah. That would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
What emoji should we tell people to leave in the comment section? That way we know who really made it to the very end. Any emoji.
Oh.
Yeah.
What emoji? Well, I love the heart. That's
The
how
heart?
I do when I do my readings, a purple heart, it's one. I love the color purple. I love the hearts. And
so three purple hearts. That way we know you guys made it to the end
there
of the
you
podcast.
go.
Yeah.
I love it.
Beautiful.
So, well, thank you so much, Angel. This has been fantastic. We could have dive into a zillion other crazy things. Maybe we'll have one where I can do a channeling of your energy.
Oh wow. Yeah, definitely.
Bring that spirit through.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to your podcast as
yes,
well.
I forgot. See, I'm having so much fun in your podcast. I forgot. Yes. A friend and I started a podcast. It's called Witches Who Podcast.
Okay.
That's why I have it. We have my sweater says Curious. Our podcast is all about curiosity, spirituality, and our journeys on how we left corporate jobs to teach yoga, and we're not starving, or
Nice.
we made it somehow.
Wow.
And especially for people that are new to spirituality, or they thinking it's new age. And so we talk about spirit, aliens, plant medicine, simulations, matrix.
I need to be a guest on that one.
Yes, we
Yeah.
would love to have you.
Yeah.
So we're launching February of 2025.
Nice.
So we're
Beautiful.
learning from the best.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, I would love to join sometime.
Thank you. I
So-
would love to have you.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Angel Houseman. Like I always like to say, it's a greater risk, not taking a risk. Till next time.
Bye.
What'd you think? It was good?
Awesome.
And then
man.
not boring?
Well, I'm so used to engaging with Yana about all these subjects. So
Yeah.
for me to stay and shut it up, I'm so proud of myself. I'm so
Yeah.
This too, and then that too.
Right,
And
right.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm so used to engaging on all these topics because we
Yeah.
talk about this stuff. And this is
Nice,
you know?
nice,
And
nice.
So and great job. You did
Thank
great.
you.
You came back full circle with your things.
Yeah.
You're excellent. You
Thank
have
you.
a great voice, and you're very patient and curious, and I was very impressed. I thought that was great, but I'm really impressed with how well you did. Huh?
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
beautiful.
So, so I was a Navy wife for 5 years. So I have a miscarriage and 2 live children from that. And that's with both is where I had my experiences. And then met my current husband now back in
And I wasn't
2007.
your husband when we met. I mean, we're
No.
Yeah. It was arranged marriage.
It was arranged, yeah.
Our boys were barely 1
One,
years old and 4
yeah.
years
Yeah.
old. So I caught the tail end of the in literally after a month or 2 of us kind of starting to see each other, and she was very hard to get and took a long time, and I was
Nice.
very patient, and I had a daughter from a prior marriage as well, and so that's where she says she's got 3. So my daughter
Nice.
is now grown up, and then we got her 2 boys, which are my 2 boys as well. Are now
That's
18
beautiful.
and 21.
We married in 2016 and he adopted them legally in
Wow.
2017.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's still good men out
Yeah.
there, right?
Oh, they're amazing men.
Would you mind just saying hi to the camera so people can just put a face that way? Just either
Oh,
that
you're
one,
still
this one.
recording?
Yeah.
Oh,
Glad I didn't say
Yeah,
that.
just say hi right there. There you go. Beautiful. All right. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that way just I can put a face to, you know, just I like to document things.
Yeah.
It's conversations like these for me are priceless to me.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
Hoy no más.